Hello, Think Liberty listeners. Welcome to episode 11 of Tales from the Shire. This week, I have my third straight presidential candidate. I was hoping to have something different this week. I was hoping that I was going to get to interview Lynn Albrecht ahead of this weekend. I was scheduled to meet with her on Wednesday, but that ended up falling through. And if you're listening to this on the day it's coming out here, February 1st of 2020, I have likely gone ahead and interviewed her earlier today or tomorrow. But if you're listening to this any other day, I will have interviewed her at some point in time in the past, and you should go look for that episode. So if you listened 2 weeks ago to my interview that I did with Dan Berman, you heard the audio quality was a little off, and I had mentioned that I think I had set something a little off when I was recording. I did the exact same thing with Arvin Vohra because it was the exact same event, and I did not take the time between recording sessions to check the audio quality on either of those. So this one's going to have the same problem with occasional popping and whatnot. What happened was I had set the recording volume just a little too high, and it got a little outside the bounds of what my recording software wants to capture. So I apologize for having 2 episodes over the course of 3 weeks with pretty rough audio quality. Anyway, Arvin Vohra is running for president as a Libertarian. He's seeking the nomination this May at the National Convention in Austin. He spends his time professionally as an educator, and he does that privately. He's not a teacher. He tutors and helps supplement some homeschooling curriculums and things like that. And I think he's very knowledgeable of the education system and how that works and how to help kids escape the Prussian education system and the government education system and whatever else. And if you've not listened to my interview that I did a couple weeks ago with the teacher who I left who I had left anonymous, the public school teacher who's a Libertarian who I had left anonymous, you should go back and listen to that episode because this one complements it very well. Arvin and I spend the first several minutes of this talking about some of the issues with the education system and then exactly where you should send your kids, if you do have a kid going through the public school education system today. Arvin spends a lot of time as well on his campaign talking about the need to pardon nonviolent drug offenders. That is one of his big issues, and we get into that as well. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Arvin's a very well-spoken guy. Please enjoy episode 11 of Tales from the Shire. All right, so I'm sitting down with Arvin Vohra. We are waiting to resume the LPNH convention, and he just got done performing very well in our presidential debate.
I appreciate that, AJ.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I think so. You're a really great public speaker, and I think you're one of the stronger candidates for that reason. But one of the other areas where you're obviously great as a candidate is your background in education. And I was hoping you could speak to a little bit about what it is that you do for helping people in that area.
Sure. I'm one of those people, strangely, that's actually a beneficiary of government school education. Because my business is there to correct problems that happen in education, the more problems government creates, the better it is financially, at least for us. Common Core is financially good for me. But when you work with people that closely, you start to see the criminal level of damage that's happening. You see people who could be amazing at math that are being crippled by Common Core. You see people who could be amazing leaders just having their confidence knocked down to nothing because they're put into a broken system. You talk to teachers, and many of these are great people who are stuck in public school are not just students, but also teachers. Some of them are great people, and yet their genius is being squandered in this system. Really, to me, a big eye-opener was the first time I saw a homeschooling convention, and I saw that You have so many people picking so many different curricula, everybody figuring out what works for them, getting feedback. And I was like, well, this is what it's supposed to be. This is what education is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be in the free market. It's supposed to be personal and individualized. That's why education has really been a very central issue for me.
Yeah, that's everything I was hoping I was going to hear. Do you have, so what then would you suggest to someone who's got a kid who's going into school right now? Where would you suggest to send them? Like, I know we have all these solutions as to how we would go about fixing the education system, but that doesn't help the person who has to send their kid to school tomorrow. So
I would say if you have a kid in school tomorrow, take the day off, and then take that day and look and see what other options there are. Learn about things like Khan Academy, OpenCourseWare, Yale's Open Course, edX. Learn about these different things, masterclass, see what else there is. Don't assume that the choice that the other people want you to choose is the only choice. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you. This is the most important thing for parents. Don't listen to people that'll tell you you don't know what you're doing, because you know more about your kid. And more importantly, you probably care more about your kid than anyone else ever has and anyone else ever can. Homeschooling is not about you having to know chemistry and physics and biology and everything. It's about you knowing your kid and helping your kid pick up from the many, many, many different choices out there of what type of education works for them. See, homeschooling isn't just parents teaching everything. It's parents basically acting as the administrator, and they make the choices and help students make choices.
All right. So in your institution, I know you do tutoring, but do you also aid with people who are doing homeschooling? And
sure.
Do you help with curriculums or any of that?
Sure. So my personal business is called Vohra Method. And we teach everything. We teach it from the ground up. So it is entire. We have many homeschooling students that come into our program. The bulk of our students aren't homeschoolers. One of the big concerns that people have with programs like ours is just expense. Our program is expensive, and we are working on lower cost alternatives. But the great thing is, you don't have to wait around for me to come up with a new solution. There are already so many great competitors out there. And these are the people who are my competitors, and yet we work well together. I've spoken at the Kumon convention, and Kumon is technically a direct competitor. And yet, because we're on the same team, we want to improve education, we're all on the same page. We're all able to work together. We're not all enemies in the free market. We're actually there saying, here's different choices. Just like with restaurants, Thai restaurants and pizza places aren't enemies. They're just different, and they're providing different things.
Right. Yeah. If there's not enough restaurants for people to go out to, then everyone's going to get used to eating at home, and they're never going to go take on that. So yeah, I can understand how having multiple resources out there for someone to go to kind of helps everybody.
Exactly.
In that industry. So can you tell me about a time maybe where you've helped, I don't know, we don't need to give names, obviously,
sure,
but any like specific instance of like helping an individual get past like the Prussian education system or the government education system and help them kind of see the light and yeah, any good stories from that?
A lot of it is actually versions of a very similar experience, right? Students, when they're in government schools, we'll tell them this is not the best choice for you. Here are some other choices. Here are some great books to think about. And at first, no one listens. For years, people don't listen. That's fine, because that's part of the process, part of that process of building up. And when you see that light go on, it's amazing. And there's all the difference in the world. Now, instead of trying to avoid reading for an English paper, they'll be asking, like, what are some good books for me to read? What are some books that are going to open my eyes? Instead of trying to just like get someone else to do their math homework, they're saying, what's some kind of cool math? Like, what is Bitcoin made out of? What's that kind of math called? In case you're curious, by the way, it's called number theory. There's all these questions. When people become excited, they realize that education is something to make them stronger, not just a tool of their oppression. It changes how they look at it. And once somebody has that transformation, they will never unhave that. They will never go back. They're never going to want anything but true, empowering education.
All right. So transitioning a little bit now, sure. You were nice enough to donate a whole bunch of books for
I did.
Our convention to all of our members who showed up here. And I think it's called something, Pull Out, something like that.
Sure. Let me tell you a little backstory on the title. I'd read the book Lean In, and I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a really good book. I know that it's unpopular in a lot of libertarian circles. That's fine. I thought it was a great book, and I still think it's a great book. And I thought, I wish that somebody when I was younger had been given me advice as a man. And so I decided to take kind of the reverse of lean in. I, graphically called it Pull Out, Men, Modern Life, and Mutiny. The full book name of the book, Lean In, is Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. So it kind of played with that. And Pull Out is very much a book about what it means to be free. What does it really mean to have consent? So we talk about a lot of things that aren't talked about in schools or in the major media or anywhere. Things ranging from the importance of things like paternity testing, ranging from the importance of financial consent. I really do believe consent needs to be informed and active in all areas of life. Absolutely in sexual areas, no question. But it also needs to be active and informed in financial areas. And so Pull Out is very much a book about consent. It's about government. It's about masculinity. It's about a lot of different things. And I think that it's something that will appeal to the libertarian sensibility.
I like that you brought up consent. I don't think we talk enough about this in our libertarian spheres. I really do believe that we are the authorities and the definitive philosophy on consent and what it is. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to hear that we have someone who's actually writing about that. That's one of the areas I think, and here's what's so important, right? People talk about the social contract, right?
Which is supposedly a contract that governs all of our behavior, but none of us sign. And that to me is that's what consent is not. Consent is not a contract that you didn't sign but still have to follow. That's nonsense. To me, consent means active and informed consent. So for example, if somebody wants to pay for their own kid's education, that's something that I believe is their natural responsibility. And if somebody wants to consensually pay for somebody else's kid's education, they have that right too. I don't think there's anything bad about charity. I think it's wonderful and great. But the idea that we should all be forced against our will over our direct objections to pay for things that we don't want to is morally wrong. It's even worse, though, when we are forced to pay for things that we find morally abhorrent. The idea, I think it's really soul crushing when we think about it, that we're all forced to pay our hard-earned taxes to just go and obliterate children overseas. I don't think any of us is okay with that. And the fact that people who believe in nonviolence, people like myself, are forced to pay for something we find morally so disgusting, that to me is not consent. And so this idea of consent really, I think, needs to be very strongly emphasized in our movement.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you care so much about that and are so passionate about that. Real quick before I let you go, sure. Day one, you're president. What does that look like?
Day one is going to be split into two halves. So day one, let's talk about second one. Second one is going to be, I'm going to be pardoning Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht. That's what I'm going to do the second I take office. Then, over the course of the next couple hours, I'm going to pardon every single nonviolent drug user, nonviolent drug seller, nonviolent drug kingpin, that's someone like Ross Ulbricht, anybody who's in jail just for having a weapon and not filling out the right form, anyone who's in prison for just using cryptocurrency in a way that the government didn't approve of enough, and anyone who didn't hurt anybody, I'm going to pardon them. But let's go even further back, because part of my campaign is talking about not just pardoning at the presidential level, but at the individual level. Jury nullification is what brought freedom of the press to America. Jury nullification is in the DNA of this country. And I think that jury nullification is an amazing tool for us to all be pardoners in chief. So that's my first day, but it actually starts before. It starts right now. So if you are on a jury and it's a victimless crime, then you just say not guilty. Hang that jury and make sure that nobody's going to jail for something that should not be a crime in the first place.
I have tried to do that before, and when they went to do the final jury selection, I got called as an alternate, and I'm like,
so close.
It was a DUI case, and I actually didn't even think the guy was guilty at all, but I didn't think he was guilty, but I didn't get to help this guy out, whatever. Yeah. When you get called for that jury selection and you actually sit through it and you see how things turn out, it's a really sobering look at how awful that world really can be.
What's really interesting about the court system is how much money they pull in, which also means how much money you can stop them from pulling in by delaying a jury. So if you make a jury just dilly-dally for 48 hours instead of 10 seconds, you are shutting down tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to be used by the state to do something immoral and damaging. So just by stalling, you're actually doing great work.
All right. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to say to my listeners before I let you go?
Yeah, if you want to join the campaign, our website is votevohra.com. That's the word vote, followed by V as in Victor, OHRA.com.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, AJ.
As always, thank you guys for listening to Tales from the Shire. I've been your host, AJ Olding. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and even, your enemies as well, if you really want to, on all the different social medias, by email, by text, and whatever else. Please, it helps a lot if you share the episode. If you're interested in engaging with me and with the rest of the Think Liberty network, you can find us on the social medias, on Facebook and whatever else. If you just search Think Liberty, you'll find us. We'll come up. I also have my own Facebook page, which is just the Tales from the Shire podcast with AJ Olding. That's up on Facebook only. I don't have my page on the other social medias like the network does. If you really like the episode, I'm encouraging you, please go over to Patreon. Drop us a couple dollars if you just search Think Liberty Network. Again, I'm being redundant. You'll find us there. I hope you guys all enjoyed this interview with Arvin Vohra. For those of you that are delegates who are coming to Austin, I hope to see you guys all there. And I hope we get to pick, a decent presidential candidate. It'll be a good time. I think we have a really good field, and I'm excited that I have so far gotten to interview 4 of the people in that field. This has been kind of an incredible run for me. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, this has been episode 11 of Tales from the Shire.